Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive with us. Today, we're going to be talking about emotional intelligence. You know EQ, and we all know that it's important. We hear a lot about how EQ can be even more important than IQ. But today we really want to go beyond the basics. So we've pulled together a bunch of research and insights from the Harvard Business Review, their book on EQ. And I got to tell you, I was pretty blown away by some of this stuff. But we don't want to just throw information at you. What we really want to do is connect the dots and figure out why this matters to you. Like, how can you actually use this information to make your life better, to be more successful, and just generally level up your game. So to help us unpack all of this, we've brought in an expert, someone who can help us connect those dots and draw out the so what. So when we talk about EQ, we're not just talking about being nice all the time, right? There's a strategic element to it. Can you tell us a little bit more about what sets EQ apart?
Yeah, for sure. You're absolutely right. It's much more than just being agreeable or, having good manners. It's really about this deep understanding of how emotions work, both yours and the emotions of others, and then using that understanding to kind of drive your effectiveness in different situations. So if you think about it, IQ might be like your raw intellectual horsepower, like how much processing power you have. But EQ is about how you actually harness that power, how you steer it to achieve success in relationships, in leadership roles, and even just in your own personal fulfillment.
I love that. So it's almost like IQ is the engine and EQ is the steering wheel.
Exactly. I like that analogy.
So you can have all the horsepower in the world, but if you don't know how to steer, you're not going to get very far.
Or you might even end up, driving yourself off a cliff.
Right. Okay, so the Harvard Business Review, they actually break down EQ into 5 core components. And I think a lot of our listeners are probably already familiar with these. But, just to make sure we're all on the same page, can you give us a quick overview?
Yeah, absolutely. So the 5 components are self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. And you can think of these as the building blocks of emotional intelligence.
Okay, so we've got our 5 building blocks.
Yeah.
And I want to start with self-awareness, because I think it's often seen as the foundation of EQ. If you don't have self-awareness, the rest of it kind of falls apart. Now, I know you've been digging into the Harvard Business Review research on this. What surprised you the most about their take on self-awareness? Was there anything unexpected about how it impacts things like leadership or decision-making?
One of the things that really stood out to me was the emphasis on the link between self-awareness and effective decision-making.
Right.
We often think about decisions as being purely rational, we just gather the data, we analyze it logically, and then boom, we make the decision. But the research suggests that it's not that simple. Truly effective decisions often involve understanding the emotional landscape, both within yourself and within the context of the decision itself.
So you're saying it's not just about the numbers, it's also about how those numbers make you feel.
Exactly. And how they might make others feel too. The HBR research found that when we ignore our emotions or the emotions of others, we can end up making decisions that might look good on paper, but ultimately they backfire.
That's fascinating. So it's almost like there's this hidden layer of information, this emotional data that we need to be tapping into. But how do we do that? For our listeners out there, if they want to get better at cultivating self-awareness, where do they even begin?
Well, there are a lot of different approaches.
Yeah.
But one of the most effective techniques is mindfulness.
Okay, so mindfulness, that's a word we hear a lot these days.
It is.
But what does it actually look like when it comes to building self-awareness?
Well, it can be as simple as taking a few minutes each day to just pause, breathe, and tune in to your internal state. Just notice. What emotions are you feeling? What thoughts are swirling around in your mind? What physical sensations are you experiencing?
So it's like hitting the pause button on autopilot.
Exactly. And just becoming aware of what's happening inside. And the key here is to cultivate a sense of non-judgmental observation. You're not trying to change anything. You're simply noticing.
I can see how that would be helpful. Just by becoming more aware of our emotions, we start to understand them better.
Right. And as you become more familiar with your own emotional landscape, you start to recognize patterns. You might notice that certain triggers consistently evoke certain emotions, or you might become aware of habitual thought patterns that are influencing your mood.
So it's like you become this emotional detective, uncovering the clues to how your mind and emotions work. But mindfulness isn't the only tool for boosting self-awareness, right?
No, not at all. Journaling can also be a really powerful tool.
Oh, journaling. I love journaling. So what are some tips for using journaling to boost self-awareness?
We can start by simply tracking your emotions throughout the day. What situations tend to trigger certain feelings? What thoughts or beliefs seem to be connected to those emotions?
So not just I feel happy, but like I feel happy because
Exactly. Explore the why behind your emotions. And the more you do that, the more insights you'll gain. You might also try writing about situations where you felt your emotions were particularly intense or challenging. Those moments where you felt like you were really losing it?
it's like reviewing game footage after a match. Trying to understand what worked, what didn't, and how you can improve your strategy next time.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of feedback. Seeking feedback from trusted sources, people who know you well and will be honest with you, can provide invaluable insights into how your emotions are coming across to others.
Yeah, feedback can be tough to hear sometimes, but it's such a gift. It's like having a blind spot mirror, showing you things that you might not be able to see on your own.
That's a great way to put it. And remember, all of this self-awareness work, it's not just an abstract exercise. It has real-world implications for your success, both professionally and personally.
So let's talk about those implications. How does being more self-aware actually translate into tangible benefits in our lives?
Well, think about it this way. When you're self-aware, you're more likely to make sound decisions because you're not letting your emotions completely hijack the process. You can anticipate how your actions might impact others, which leads to stronger relationships and more effective collaboration. And you're better able to identify and leverage your strengths while acknowledging and addressing areas where you need to grow.
So it's not just about understanding yourself better, it's about using that understanding to navigate the world more effectively.
Exactly. Self-awareness is the foundation upon which you can build greater emotional intelligence. And that intelligence can have a ripple effect on every aspect of your life. It's like having this greater sense of control over your reactions. Instead of just like getting swept away by your emotions, you can kind of step back, observe what's happening, and then choose a more constructive response.
Yeah, that makes sense. But, let's be real, this stuff isn't always easy. And the HBR material actually included some pretty compelling case studies that I think really brought these EQ concepts to life. Were there any in particular that really resonated with you?
Oh, absolutely. There's one that comes to mind that I think really highlights the power of empathy in leadership. It involved a manager
Hmm.
who was dealing with a team that was just completely burned out. Like, productivity was plummeting, morale was low, everyone was feeling stressed and overwhelmed.
Ooh, I think we've all been there at some point. So how did this manager turn things around?
Well, instead of focusing on metrics or deadlines, they chose to tap into empathy. They started scheduling one-on-one meetings with each team member, and they really focused on listening.
Okay, so they listened, but what does that actually mean? How did they listen differently?
It wasn't just about passively hearing words. It was about actively trying to understand the emotions that were underlying their struggle.
So they were trying to understand the emotions behind their team's struggles.
Exactly. And you know what? It completely shifted the dynamic. The team members started to feel heard and understood, which created this sense of psychological safety.
Oh, that's so important. Feeling safe enough to actually open up.
Yeah. And once that happened,
Yeah.
they were able to really share what was going on.
So what were they saying?
They revealed that they were feeling overloaded, that the deadlines were unrealistic, and that there was a lack of clarity around priorities.
So it wasn't just about laziness or lack of effort.
No, not at all. It was about these systemic issues. They were preventing them from doing their best work.
And I'm guessing, once the manager understood the root of the problem, they were able to start finding solutions.
Exactly. They worked with the team to redistribute some tasks,
Yeah.
adjust deadlines, and implement clearer communication channels.
So empathy wasn't just about being nice. It was
Mhm.
actually the key to solving the problem.
I think so. And the results speak for themselves. Productivity improved, morale went up, and the whole work environment became much more positive.
That's amazing. It's such a powerful example of how EQ can lead to tangible results. Now, the HBR material also talked about the importance of EQ in navigating change, which can be so challenging for individuals and organizations alike. Did you come across any examples of leaders effectively using EQ during times of transition?
Yes, definitely. There was another case study that really highlighted this. It involved a leader who was guiding their team through a major organizational transition. And instead of just announcing the changes
Yeah.
and expecting everyone to fall in line, this leader recognized the anxiety and uncertainty that people were feeling.
Yeah, transitions can be so unsettling. People naturally resist change.
Right. And that can create a lot of tension.
So how did this leader handle it?
Well, they really leaned into their own EQ, particularly self-awareness and social skills. They started by acknowledging their own anxieties about the transition.
So they didn't try to pretend that
No,
they weren't feeling any apprehension.
no, not at all. They were very upfront and vulnerable
Yeah.
about their own feelings. And I think that created a space for others to do the same.
So vulnerability became a strength,
Yeah.
not a weakness.
Exactly. And then they used their social skills
Mm-hmm.
to facilitate open forums and communication channels
Yep.
to make sure that everyone felt heard.
That's so important.
And it really helped to minimize resistance and build support for the changes.
It sounds like they approached the transition with a very human-centered approach,
They did.
acknowledging the emotional impact on everyone involved.
And ultimately, it
Yeah.
led to a more successful outcome for everyone.
That's fantastic. Another great example of how EQ can be used to navigate even the most challenging situations. And it's not just about warm and fuzzy feelings. It's about leveraging your understanding of emotions to achieve positive results.
Absolutely.
And remember, while we've been focusing on the workplace, EQ is just as valuable in your personal life.
Right. These same principles,
Uh-huh.
self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, social skills, they can help you build stronger relationships with your loved ones, communicate more effectively, and navigate the ups and downs of life with more resilience.
I love that. I think sometimes people dismiss EQ as being soft or touchy-feely, but these examples really showcase how crucial it is for achieving success in all areas of life.
I agree.
It's about understanding the power of emotions and using that understanding to create positive change, both within ourselves and in the world around us.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
It seems like we're often told to make decisions based solely on logic and data, but maybe integrating emotions into our decision-making processes is what's been missing all along. It's like we're always striving for that, perfectly rational, Spock-like approach to decision-making.
Right.
But what if emotions actually hold valuable insights that we've been overlooking?
Well, the HBR material actually suggests that relying solely on logic and data can sometimes lead us astray. Emotions can provide a different kind of intelligence, like a more nuanced understanding of the human element that spreadsheets and algorithms can't always capture.
So it's not about throwing logic out the window, it's about integrating it with emotional intelligence for a more holistic approach. So emotions can act as warning signals, then
Yeah.
alerting us to potential pitfalls or unintended consequences that we might miss
Right.
if we're only looking at the numbers. For example, if you're about to make a major business decision, you might analyze all the financial data, the projections, but if something just feels off or doesn't align with your values, that emotional dissonance could be a sign to dig deeper or reconsider your options.
Absolutely. Or imagine you're facing a difficult personal decision.
Mm-hmm.
You could create a pros and cons list, weigh all the logical factors,
Yeah.
but ultimately, your gut feeling might tell you something different.
Right.
And learning to trust your intuition, which is often informed by emotions, can be incredibly powerful.
It's like that saying, let your head guide you, but let your heart lead you.
I like that.
And I imagine this becomes even more crucial in situations where there are complex human dynamics at play, like in leadership, team building, conflict resolution.
Absolutely. In those situations, understanding and responding to emotions is paramount. It's about recognizing that people aren't robots.
Mm-hmm.
They're driven by feelings, motivations, past experiences. All of these things shape their perceptions and behaviors.
It seems like we're finally starting to acknowledge the importance of emotions. In a world that has often valued stoicism and detachment, maybe embracing our emotions rather than suppressing them is the key to unlocking a whole new level of intelligence and effectiveness.
I think you're right. It's about recognizing that emotions are not a weakness. They're a source of information and insight. And by learning to understand and manage them effectively, we can navigate the complexities of life with greater wisdom, compassion, and success.
This has been such an insightful deep dive into the world of EQ. And it's clear that emotional intelligence isn't just a buzzword, it's a skill set that can truly transform the way we lead, work, relate to others.
I couldn't agree more.
And I want to thank you for sharing your expertise with us today. You've given us a lot to think about.
It's been my pleasure.
And to all of you listening, I want to leave you with this. What if we all committed to making decisions, not just with our heads, but also with our hearts? Imagine the ripple effect that could have on our lives and the world around us. Until next time, keep diving deep by